Improv tipsters, welcome back to Improv Tips, where I and some of the best improvisers in the world give you improv tips and advice to make you a better, more confident, and happier improviser wherever you are in your improv journey. I am, as always, your host, Paul Valancourt. Let's begin. Today's fantastic guest improv tipper is Joe Thompson. Now, Joe is a theater maker and producer from Sheffield. He's also the co-founder of Little Chicago Theater, and he has a fantastic tip for us today about exploitation in improv. Now, if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel by clicking the subscribe button and hitting the notification bell so you will get the improv tips as they come out. And leave us a comment down below. Let me know what you think about this improv tip or about any of the improv tips. I would love to hear from you. Joe's tip today is about exploitation improv. It is a big idea and he delves really deep into it. It generated so many questions for me that I wanted to ask, so I was able to reach out to him, and he was generous enough with his time to sit down and do a more in-depth Q&A chat interview with me, and that's right here, ding ding. The tip itself is really interesting and brought up a lot of really interesting ideas of how we do improv, how we run improv theaters and the business of improv and the community of improv. I think you're really going to get a lot out of it. So without any further ado, please sit back, relax, and enjoy Joe Thompson.
Hi, my name is Joe Thompson. I co-founded and am currently responsible for Little Chicago Theatre in Sheffield. And I've got a little tip to you today about avoiding exploitation in improv. Now, I've had to write some of this down, so I may be looking over at a script I've written. I know a bit uncouth for the improv community, but bear with me. It's a slightly complicated issue, so I wanted to get my thoughts down on paper. So, in my time doing improv, I've been particularly interested in how improv communities have the possibility to become exploitative, and how balancing social and economic sustainability can be vital in creating improv communities that last. Now, it was Amy Seahan in her book, Whose Improv Is It Anyway? A fantastic book, by the way, highly recommend reading. But she described the various different phases of improv organizations in the United States. The second phase, featuring organizations like Improv Olympic, introduced the concept of classes and participation being the primary form of monetization for the arts form. Now, this community framework, I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It includes things like leveled classes, performing groups being formed in-house by the theatre themselves, and income for the organisation is often in these organisations mostly sourced from participants and those taking classes, and not necessarily from the box office as much. Now, this business model could be considered now the dominant model of operation for professional improv organisations in the USA and by extension the UK. However, there are multiple pressure points within these organisations that are vulnerable to exploitation. Now, I want to be clear, when I say exploitation, I realise this invokes pictures of Victorian child workers and fat cat capitalists, which is unintentional. Rather, what I mean by exploitation is it creates a model that creates an inequitable social and economic structure within its communities. So people who do improv often do it for personal development or to learn a new skill. However, people continue doing improv because they're friends they make or the community they are welcomed into. Amy Seahan, going back to her, fantastic book, by the way, definitely read it. And if by any chance she's watching, which I really hope she is, you're fantastic. You're great. You're awesome. But anyway, Amy Seahan, she dubs this term for subcultural capital, which, to possibly be very reductive on it, talks about this idea of an in-group status that can be gained through engaging in these communities. So overall, this can lead to people feeling improv as a major part of their social life, their cultural expression, and more widely, their personality. However, when they exist in a system that means they have to pay to even participate in that community, that can raise a series of issues because it impacts the way not only that people connect with the activity itself, but the way that they interact with other people within that community. So, for example, it can put friendship groups at risk, because what if I'm at a level 2 and I meet people in a level 2 class and level 3 has auditions and I don't get in, or I just can't afford it. So I've gained this social group and I've lost it because they continue together through the classes, or there's this expectation that's built of stage time being payment in itself for performers. That can cause people to undervalue their own skills and this unequitable idea of who should get paid. Or You can also have social hierarchies that build because of this financial structure, and that can lead to certain members just feeling unwelcome or feeling like they can't quite get on this social ladder that they need to climb. And all of this can lead to a system that is somewhat exploitative and benefits a select few at the centre at the expense of the larger community. Now, I want to be clear here. These issues do not lie purely at the feet of just a few irresponsible leaders, and I'm not decrying people running organisations like this. It's rather the nature of the model itself and the ecosystem that it builds. The training centre model is in many ways a zero-sum game. There always must exist less teachers than there are learners. Community should never be spread too thin amongst organisations for fear of income loss. Monetisation must exist to sustain those at the top of the chain. And these aren't greedy fat cats. They are often the same starving artists that exist at every stage, who are desperately trying to balance these limited resources so they themselves can make a basic living doing something that they love. So this is a complex issue, and the difficulties of solving it could take a 60-part series to explore. But today I just want to go through 3 very simple ways that you can break down some of these hierarchies caused by this training centre model. So firstly, I highly encourage you to explore other revenue streams. So one that comes to mind straight away is funding. You can get funding from trusts and foundations. In the UK, there's the Arts Council, which is definitely worth approaching with applications at least. And these groups will often fund you for a cause or to do good. So you can focus on the mission of your organisation rather than just the accumulation of income to sustain this often very small team. It will also allow your community leaders to focus specifically on creating equitable communities rather than building economic structures that maximise the potential for income. Now, funders aren't your only option. Just a few others include things like crowdfunding, merchandise, corporate work, working in education, podcasting or content creation. These are all powerful monetization streams that can alleviate that pressure off your classes. Now, it's all about diversifying, and I know that many of what these methods that I've talked about, a lot of organizations already do, but the more you can diversify, the more you can take that pressure off having to reinforce that social structure to keep people paying for classes. Secondly, maintain good professional boundaries. Social status is a tempting benefit of being a community leader, particularly if you're one who isn't charging for classes. There can still sometimes be this incentive to gain this status amongst this very strong, very welcoming community. And it's further encouraged with the training centre model. However, it's always important to recognise that if you gain the social status, it is far more a responsibility than it is a reward. People who value that community will see you as a gatekeeper, whether that's right or wrong, but they will treat you accordingly. Now, I would recommend making sure you use this position to dissect this social hierarchy and help generate a more even playing field for everyone. Now, this could mean not using certain bits of community jargon or avoiding certain warm-ups that can feel very ritualistic and can be alienating to certain new members. Or it could mean empowering unheard voices within your community or challenging structures that make it difficult for these voices to be heard. Finally, I would encourage your local community to grow beyond your reach. Now, this is something that is often very difficult to do within this model because, as I mentioned, spread your community too thin and you feel like you're going to lose a lot of your income. But even with the current prevalence of the training centre model, that extent of which improv is a zero-sum game is often overstated. It exists, but not to the extent that people think it does. There's often a lot of long-term benefit for community leaders in encouraging your community to flourish in other classes, shows, or workshops. And this goes double for events that are free. There is often this weird belief that something that's free or pay what you feel undermines the value of the paid classes or shows. But that is so far from the truth. Allowing a free space to exist where people can come and participate in improv, it gives a great space for the local community to grow and thrive without having to pay for classes, which means that people aren't feeling like, if I can't keep going to these classes, I lose this community, I'm just going to disappear and never come back. And also, more importantly, it means that people can give things a go in a free space. They're not sacrificing or risking any of their personal money or really that much of their time if it's a drop-in session. And that's going to help generate more audiences for shows and more participants for classes, because people have this low-risk space to come and give it a go. Now, overall, it's going to take collaboration across communities and a sharing of learning to grow as a national, global community and create these less hierarchical structures that are so vulnerable to exploitation. Until then, because it's going to take us years to work this out, I encourage people reaching out to me to give their ideas. But until we get there, I wish you all the best of your journeys to making improv a little better for everyone. Please feel free to contact Little Chicago with any ideas that you may have. I always like to chat about what can be done here. And keep being amazing.
Hey friends, thanks for checking out the video, and if you want to hear a little bit more, check out one of these 2 quality videos. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe and follow us on social media. All the links are in the description down below, and let me know what you would like to see an improv tip about. Thanks for watching.